to be where they had to fuel up the old steam engines with water and all that type of stuff. So when that happens, they got to start bringing personnel in, and they start building houses and stuff like that. So this town was founded by the railroad. There's generations of railroaders here. I mean, there's like 4 generation railroaders working on the railroad right here, local in Crewe. You don't see that in big cities. It's, hey, how'd you get on the railroad? Well, I just put an application in. Well, how'd you do it? Well, my dad was here. My granddad was here. My great granddad was here. This is a generation railroad town.
I think it's really cool is the looking at the different the different homes in Crewe, and realizing that these were built by the railroad. These were built for families to move in and for them to take care of their employees. And that's just not something that happens in the world anymore. We used to walk the streets after dinner and look at houses and dream. We actually have 6 kids. So, looking at these big, huge railroad houses, and I think we both love the old houses and the uniqueness of them. Not cookie cutter like in the city. And also the price for a middle income family to buy enough square footage to house 5 kids at home, and a dog and a cat and a fish and that sort of thing.
I came back to Crewe to raise my children. When we exited active military service, we were looking for a place to go where we could raise our children in that Mayberry RFD environment, and Crewe offered that opportunity to us. It is still in many ways a Mayberry, but it is also struggling with problems economically as well as the other issues that affect most small towns in rural areas. But it was a good place to raise my family, and so much so that my daughter is determined to raise her family here. So I think we've made a good decision.
But I can remember when there were 3 grocery stores on Main Street, 2 women's clothing stores, and Kinchlows, a male clothing store, 2 dime stores, and 2 or 3 banks. And it's just not there anymore. That's sad.
This town was built on hard work. I think through the years of depression and so forth that went on, the town just kind of deflourished, and it just hasn't been able to bring itself back out of that.
A lot of our buildings in our downtown area are nice architectural gems, I would say. Got a lot of good bones to them. They just need a little bit of TLC.
We have a lot of older buildings now that, because there are no longer businesses in them, are starting to deteriorate. We have folks that own them, but they often lack the monies to fix the facade of the building to make it what it once was.
I think if walls could talk, they could tell you all kinds of history about what happened. This is a major route for when during the Civil War, from the Battle of Petersburg to the signing of the Treaty at the Appomattox. This was 460 was a route that they took. So just imagine if this house could talk, what it could say, or if this land could talk, what it could say. I mean, you ain't gonna get that in a new home.
You know, sometimes you just sit there and you look around and you think about how much that house has been through. I mean, 100 years, that's a long time. That's a really long time. And, you know, it's kind of mind-blowing when you really sit and think about it, and you're like, this house has seen so much. It's seen, you know, the industrialization of the nation, the civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement, the you know, how many storms it's been through, how many snowy winters, you know, how many families were raised there.
Growing up, I remember being in these wonderful stately homes who would just, I mean, you could bounce on the floor and they would just find they were great, and now they've kind of fallen, some of them have fallen in disrepair. I guess as a child, it's so many good memories there. The nice staircases with the hardwood floors, whitewashed outsides, columns. The house right next to the telephone company used to be the assistant superintendent's house. and that used to have secret passages all through it. You could go from upstairs to downstairs.
Our heart lies with the older homes. We would rather see the old stuff preserved than to be knocked down and new stuff put up. You just don't see new buildings with the old architecture and it's beautiful.
We have a very unique home in Crewe that is built completely out of rock. It was a home that was built by Luckstone that wanted to show that rock could be used to build homes in Virginia. Shortly after that home was introduced, a law was introduced in the state of Virginia that said that homes could not be built out of rock.
Hi, I'm Sherry Levins Coates, right here in downtown Crewe, Virginia. Okay, my husband and I own Crewe Florist, and we've owned it for over 19 years. It originally was Newby's, which was a department store, and it was built in 1904. And then in the late 60s, early 70s, it was another clothing store. It had been closed for several years. And then it became Crewe Florist. The building is wonderful, and the best thing about this building is that it was built in 1904. And the worst thing about this building is that it was built in 1904. Things like, you know, the condensation on the skylight there, things like that. And I sort of think of it, I call her a she, and anyone that knows me knows my mantra is, for the UFO, ugly, fat, and old, when you can't hide it, you decorate it. She is not ugly. There might be a few places. She's big, yes, she's fat, and she's old. And yes, I try to decorate her. And people will come in here and say, wow, this is what an old florist looks like. This building has 3,000 square feet down and 3,000 up. It has the old shelves with the rolling ladders, which you don't find anymore. And it is just the most beautiful place. But anything like this can be made so much bigger, just like Crewe.
The actor Stephen Mock's family was from Crewe. His father and his brother grew up at a house that we called the Mocked House. The family ran a laundry service there in the 30s. Stephen's father, I understand, died very early, but his uncle became a medical doctor and very famous, well-known medical doctor up in the Baltimore area, and he used to tell Stephen about Crewe. But when they were filming Young George Washington, Stephen Mock took time out of his schedule to come to Crewe to see what was here, because he had never been to Crewe. And at the time, the former mayor's business was there. Herb Taylor ran his insurance office out of what we called the Mocked House. And of course, as they were walking around touring the house, they opened the door, and inside of one of the doors, one of the closets, was an old Mocked & Company dry cleaning clothes hanger. And the mayor gave it to Mr. Mocked. That house has since been picked up and moved across the street, so it is still preserved, but it's not in the original location. It's actually catty corner across the street. We have a very unique radio station in Crewe called WSVS. It was started after World War II and became the home of Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, who at the time were part of the Martha White Flower Hour that promoted bluegrass and country music throughout the nation. So they would do their shows here at the radio station on their appointed day of the week. They would record these, they would send them off to Nashville and other places that needed to go. And in between, they would do tours in the area, hitting various cities where they would do their concerts, and of course got a lot of rave reviews at that time. So we're very proud of that connection. Many of these people stop at the Crewe Historic Railroad Park, which is very unique. The Norfolk and Western Railroad Society, in fact, said it was much better than the bigger one in Roanoke, because here in Crewe, you can actually climb on the engines and climb on the cars and touch the equipment and see the track, and you're right next to an active railroad yard. So we get a lot of tourism through that.
you go in there and see the model on how it used to be versus what it is now, it was, I mean, they had a major roundhouse here. They serviced major engines, and it impacted this area so much.
Downtown Crewe, be it 2 blocks long, has so much to offer. The people from Booker's that are keeping the small little hardware going, because there's no big hardware, thank goodness, here. The drugstore next door, a small town drugstore, nothing big like Walgreens or CVS. You have a quilt shop a few doors down. The quilt shop is wonderful, giving lessons and sewing lessons and making quilts. We have so much to offer. People have come from out of town to us.
To me, growing up, Crewe was like a mixture between Happy Days and Mayberry. You were either at one of your friends' homes or in the park playing ball or at a Little League game. Wherever you ended up at lunch was when you got your peanut butter and jelly sandwich and Kool-Aid. It was a community-based rearing children atmosphere here.
You really do walk down the street and you know people and you say hello, and for the most part everybody will talk and say hi to you. That you don't have get out of my way hustle and bustle of a big city. I pull my car out to go to work and I can stop and talk with somebody and wave at the cop, but and or wave at whoever, and just it's a friendlier community.
And I love that when we do have an opportunity to communicate with our local business owners, we actually have a special relationship with the Crewe florist. She will take Kate and my husband into the back when he buys Friday flowers and create something together, rather than I'll go do that, and that disconnect. So there's this awesome opportunity when you're in a smaller town to create relationships and do good things for good people, I guess.
We have a way about us where people can disagree, and they generally disagree agreeably. But even if they get mad at each other, the person that gets mad at you will be the first person there with a bucket of water if your house is burning down. I think that's what makes small towns pretty unique.
My husband died 29 years ago, and there's no way that any town can have more wonderful people that will stand by you.
You see it most when something bad happens to a member of the community, and all of a sudden this major uprising of everybody that lives here, regardless of any personal feelings they may have held toward this person, everybody stands up to help, and that doesn't happen everywhere, and especially in today's very divided climate, to see those things put aside and see everybody rise up for a common goal to help somebody, that doesn't exist everywhere, and I think that's important, and I think it's really kind of cool to see that in the citizens of Crewe.
It is just the most loving group of people, and maybe we're a bedroom community, but still we have older people, younger people coming up, and to sit in church this morning and look at all these wonderful people that are here in Crewe. We're blessed. We're extremely blessed.
An uninspired mind would look at Main Street and think, ugh. But if you really take a minute to look at Main Street and look at these beautiful brick buildings, and you have to use your imagination a little bit, but you can really see something, beautiful underneath all of these places that have been left behind and kind of forgotten about.
So I would think taking care of the buildings and the streets and the sidewalks would initiate people to say, wow, they're really trying to uplift Crewe, and it would get more community involvement and more people out there to be more community conscious.
I was explaining to Kate why it was important for us to come here and why revitalization is so important. And I think revitalization is important because it brings families to our community, and she was like, more friends to play with?
If we can focus on property maintenance, if we can focus on getting some grants for our downtown and doing some facelift to our downtown area. I see a lot of enthusiasm. I see a lot of pride, and I really see the residents getting on board with our efforts on beautification, revitalization, and downtown improvements.
We have great people that want Crewe to do better. Maybe we're not going to be like we were 50 years ago, but we can be a different better.
Okay. We could use HGTV's help in helping us put on a new face and become what we once were, and to at least be more attractive to people that are looking to live in that Mayberryan environment, raise their families in a Mayberryan environment, participate in local civic clubs, and be a vibrant part of our community.